If I could tell Mary Curtis anything in words, I would first of all say thank you. Thank you actually covers all of our times together.
My dad was a pharmacist. He was in First World War in France and came back and went to pharmacy school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which was just 30 minutes from where he ended up, and came to Graham to work for a pharmacist, and then later went to another drugstore in Graham, North Carolina, and ended up buying the drugstore from him. My mom was a teacher to start with. I don't remember that she taught after they were married. They were married pretty quickly, and she had children, myself and then my sister. So they lived on North Main Street in Graham, North Carolina. What did I see growing up in Graham? What was it like? It was a great small town. You knew everybody, everybody knew you. That was good and bad, but mostly good. You walked everywhere. There was two movies, one that showed Westerns on the weekend and one that showed all kind of film. We knew all the merchants. My dad, of course, knew everybody. It was a great small town to grow up in. Mary-Curtis was born in 1936. She was always independent, and she was always anxious to try new things, but she was always very caring, always had other people's welfare at heart. We both loved sports, participated in basketball. We went to a small high school. You could participate in everything. Actually, there weren't too many things that were available to you, but basketball was, and we loved that. We loved football. She was a cheerleader and played in the band. She was always kind and also very thoughtful. She was just a wonderful, wonderful person. She was as close as a sister could be. Mary-Curtis went to college at Salem College in Winston-Salem as a freshman. And she fit right in to start with. I don't think she ever second-guessed where she was. And she didn't seem to be homesick or anything to start with. It was just the right place.
So in my senior year, I and a few of my friends at one time were looking around for who were we going to date, as boys will do. And we were looking through the Salem yearbook, and I saw Mary Curtis's picture on several of the pages in that yearbook, and she had a very nice smile that caught my attention. And so I wrote her a letter, is what you did in those days, and asked her for a date. And she replied with a letter, I don't remember when or how, and said she would accept. And so in the fall of my senior year, without knowing her, I went to the senior dorm and her roommate introduced us. And that's how it all started. Obviously, not knowing her, my first impression became important, and she came marching through the front entrance of the dorm. And I said, okay, here we go. And meeting Mary-Curtis, right away I noticed her wonderful accent, her gentle way of speaking, her smile, and her way of being right from the get-go. She put on no airs, she put on no pretenses. She was just, from the very beginning, who she really was. It became pertinent for me to go down to Graham and meet her family. So I remember driving down there. I had never been to Graham, and I remember driving into the town not being sure where to find her house. And so I drove around the little circle where it has typical southern towns have monuments in them in the center of the city. So I drove around that monument several times before I figured out which street to take, which was Main Street. And then I knocked on the door. Her mother came to the door, opened, and I said, well, I'm Diggs Gramley. Once we both got beyond the college days of that senior year, then we began to think in terms of getting married, of course. We almost, without saying it, knew that's where we were headed. And so then we became engaged after college, and then, of course, moved on to setting a marriage date in this part of our life. Mary-Curtis and I got married at the church she grew up in, the Presbyterian church there in Graham. And we had a regular Southern kind of marriage, I guess you'd say, with some of the families having us over and inviting us and doing this and that. And so that's where we got married, at the Presbyterian church. After we were married, we spent the first couple of years in Winston-Salem where both of us taught. I had decided I would go ahead and teach and maybe coach for a while. And so we spent several years in Winston-Salem doing that. We had 5 children, Jane and Dale, 2 daughters, and then we had Walter, Andrew, and Joseph. We're sitting on the sofa one evening looking at National Geographic, and in there was an article featuring Oregon. And it was a time we didn't know, but a time in which we felt like we really needed a change. And so, very simply put, we said, let's go to Oregon. It was that simple, and so we did. And I think this illustrates, if I may, the way we were, in that we were always open to new things. We didn't maybe understand all of that to begin with in our marriage, but as time went along, we began to discover there was something in us that wanted to do more than we had been doing. We didn't know what that might be, but that's what we had decided, and that's why it was so simple. The time was right. We made that kind of a decision.
My childhood was full of, well, a lot of moving, because our family moved a ton, all over Oregon, in the Eugene area, as well as Eastern Oregon, lived on a farm. So full of adventure, always had a big backyard and always had trees to climb in.
All through this, Mary-Curtis was very patient and very open and willing to move all of our kids and our bearings to these different places. She had some input into this, but she was always open to what I was doing.
So my favorite location living-wise, I mean, I would say I probably have a couple, One was the ranch, the 1,000-acre ranch in Telecasset, Oregon, which is eastern Oregon near La Grande, Oregon. We only were there for a short time because we could only survive it economically for a short time, but we had 1,000 acres to roam. We had a little pond, we had all sorts of farm machinery to play in, we had animals to take care of. So I have vivid memories of that.
After a certain point in time, we came back to Eugene, and we both decided we needed to be in one place for the kids to go through their high school years. And so we resettled in Eugene, and I found a small business that I began to do. I'd always thought about, well, why not run a business? So I began running a business and did that for about 8 years while the kids were in school. And Mary-Curtis began to do her graduate work in both counseling and then early childhood education at the University of Oregon. And so she began to also run the child program at the university.
I loved how she treated all 5 of us kids extremely differently and had, I think, different relationships with all of us. I loved the relationship she had with my dad. She kept him in check, and he kept her in check. And I thought their relationship was fantastic. I loved that. I loved her, sense of adventure and willingness to do anything. To agree to live on a 1,000-acre ranch, not knowing how to farm wheat or cattle, to me is just mind-boggling. I worry about making sure our yard is in order and our house is relatively clean, and she was willing to move with 5 kids aged, I don't know what age we were at the time. I was probably 1st or 2nd grade, to this 1,000-acre ranch that came with a farmhand, and it was amazing. So that sense of adventure and willingness to put up with maybe my dad's quirk at the time, but she had her own. But yeah, I would say I loved that about her too, and those sorts of decisions and her open mind and willingness to do those things led to a ton of fantastic memories and, unbeknownst to me, developmental experiences that mean a lot.
After doing that, after a point, and Mary-Curtis finished her PhD in early childhood education, I told her that, Mary-Curtis, it is time for me to go where you go. And it was, again, just like our move to Oregon was that simple, nothing complicated. I told her it was her turn. And so that's really what we did. And so she found a job, ending up getting a job at what is now Southern Oregon University in the education department there. And so we made another move among our many to Southern Oregon. In 1988, she began her job at SOU. There was something in her that had a hunger for helping others, not only all people, but a special theme through her life of children. This goes all the way back to when she first was teaching, because when we got married, her whole classroom of kids came to our wedding, which was an interesting thing, but when you look back on it, what does this say about Mary-Curtis and her ability to connect with children? And I felt like through all our travels and all that we did, this was always something within her that was waiting to show up. Mary-Curtis spent, I think, about 8 years in the department there at SOU. And she, as she always did. She worked very hard. And after about 8 years or so, she felt like it was time to do something else. And so, as usual, she would look around and see what was going on, and things would happen. So she actually worked for CASA for a couple of years. They were having some issues, and so she became director of that.
It is a program that brought volunteers with sort of outside perspectives into to set up advocates for kids in the juvenile court system. And so my interactions with her initially is she started to get involved with juvenile cases, child welfare cases that were coming into family court. She was a very strong advocate of that program and bringing more resources to bear and kind of looking at what was happening to kids that were involved in the child welfare system. If you were to ask any judge, the value of that program and how it is incorporated into their decision making, no one would flinch at telling you it's one of the most valuable assets in that system. But when Mary-Curtis was starting to set that up, it certainly wasn't received with open arms. She had to convince people that the right thing to do for a child was to let a volunteer have an opportunity to have oversight. It was another voice in a courtroom that often is contentious. And so I think, she had to kind of be that cutting edge on that issue. And so that's how I first met her. She was an advocate for CASA, and she was an advocate for kids through the child welfare system.
As she was going along, she and another individual began talking about a need for services for children and families. And this began to percolate in her mind. And so as a result of that, she came up with this wanting to start what became the Family Nurturing Center.
We're pleased to be joined by Mary-Curtis Gramley from the Family Nurturing Center. Mary-Curtis, thanks for coming in.
Oh,
good to see you
pleasure
again.
to be here. Thank you.
So tell us, in case our viewers don't know about the Family Nurturing Center, what is it you guys do over there?
The Family Nurturing Center is a child abuse and neglect prevention program, and we have a full array of services for children and their parents, children up to age 5. So they come to the center daily, some of them come once or twice a week for special kinds of classrooms. We visit in the home with the families, we offer respite care, we provide parenting, education, and support. We have diapers and clothing and food and a basic wraparound service for families who are facing lots of challenges and have small children.
And she started this from scratch, literally, driving around in our car with some car seats to take the first couple of client children to a location she found that somebody gave her in the back of one of their buildings. And that's how it all started.
I met her through a friend who, I had moved to the area recently from the East Coast and was looking for work. And my friend who had worked in social services in the Rogue Valley knew of Mary-Curtis and had seen that there was an opening and heard about the Family Nurturing Center, knew that Mary-Curtis was starting this program, and said, this is one of the most amazing people ever, and I think we should go apply to see if we could be working in some of the therapeutic classrooms. And I remember when I met Mary-Curtis, I just had the idea of whatever that human is doing, I want to be a part of.
When I retired from the active practice, I thought I had a really good feel and understanding of what went on in the community, what the needs were, what kids needed, what families needed. And this was a whole new chapter. I was hearing in the stories of some of the families and these kids. So the opportunity to be doing something that I hadn't had a chance to do before was really important. At that point, I concluded this is the most important thing going on in the Valley. There are a lot of good things happening, but I want to be involved here because I think this is the most important thing.
I think the group that really founded this organization knew exactly what needed to be done, and they did it. They were a working board. They rolled their sleeves up and got involved in every little thing. So it wasn't a typical board staff relationship. It was a group of people, passionate people coming together for a common goal to really set people up for success instead of failure, which most systems end up doing.
I became increasingly aware that a lot of the systems that were designed to help people supposedly were also very traumatizing, both for children and for families, and the importance of really being thoughtful about how to create a therapeutic experience for people to actually truly be able to heal. And my sense, what I loved so much about working with Mary-Curtis is that she understood that. And that was something that I did not see happening in other programs, or certainly there wasn't that kind of attention to that.
So I think what Mary-Curtis, when she very first started, what she was to us is she was a beacon of light. You know, I often say that she's our North Star, that she keeps us, you know, on track for the right reason. And I think she really, I have always said since I started that I feel like Family Nurturing Center is more of a movement than it is a program, that we have an obligation as a community to take care of those who were not cared for when they were a child. Or there's a lot of people who say they love children, but that when the child has really been compromised to the point that their behavior is how they speak to the world, people see that behavior as something completely different than what it is, when it's really just a child that needs to learn to love and trust and to feel safe. She really knew that we could change that.
She always took the time to sit down and just really ask about you, and she was interested in where you came from. And no matter what your past was, she always had a way of making you feel like things were gonna be okay. And she just, she loved people no matter what. And that's what I really loved about her.
And so it happened, in my opinion, that when the Nurturing Center came along and germinated, this gave her an opportunity to serve children, to work with other agencies in the community, and to begin to gain a credibility with what she was trying to do for other families. And so she was beginning to fill what I would consider a niche that she saw was much needed in this community. And so nothing could stop her because she was driven to do this. But she did this, in my opinion, in a way that was very humble, very caring, and very honest.
What I loved about Mary-Curtis was every time we went to see her at the Oasis Center, she was standing in the doorway waiting for us to show up. And she was just as excited for all of us moms and babies to get there as we were to be there. And I just loved her enthusiasm. Every time we went there, she was so excited to see us, so excited to play with the babies. And she just always had a glow of happiness surrounding her. And when you were around her, it was like you were in a moment where nothing else mattered. You just really enjoyed the company of her.
Mary-Curtis set a cultural expectation that when a parent comes in there, that the assumption will be they love their child in the best way they can. And that assumption will govern everything that we do, and we will treat them as the best person for the child and the person who loves the child the most. And so this idea that there would be no judgment, that there would be no restrictions on the belief system that mom's best or dad's best, and that we got to help them be strong, and an assumption that they want to be strong, that they want to be better parents, that they want to have the best future for their children.
She knew that we couldn't help people if we didn't build a relationship and build trust with them, especially when it's dealing with their kiddos or their history that's really traumatic sometimes for them to relive. And so Mary-Curtis just wanted to cut the middle out and get straight to work.
Nothing seemed impossible with her. It was really within the realm of possibility to solve these problems. And so to be a part of her believing in that really helps to carry that vision forward.
You know, her legacy going forward is also these families and the kids that came through the nurturing center. And really, I mean, that's actually really going to be her greatest legacy, is these children when they're in the community, that the change that she engendered by this work with them, creating that space, and those children being our community, that really actually I think is going to be her legacy.
I think it's rare to meet people who really can have a feeling for the magic that lives in the lives and in the world of children. And Mary-Curtis was one of the rare people to me that really understood that and could see that and feel that and honor that, and that her dedication to protecting that world for children, I think, was very, very unique and kind of rare in this world.
I guess when you step back and look at her work and what she tried to do, she always did it for the right reasons and for what she believed. And given that, I do believe that's why she created a legacy.
I think the one last thing I would have liked to tell her is just thank you. And how much I love her, respect her, am impressed by the life she's lived. You know, and I think in goodbye, which I never felt like I got to say, but I think the biggest thing would be thank you. She just meant so much to so many people. And I hope she understood that and appreciated that, although she would probably never take the credit for it.
If I could tell Mary-Curtis one last thing, I would tell her thank you. Thank you.
If I could tell Mary-Curtis one thing, I would tell her that I'm okay and I'm gonna be okay. Yeah, just that we're gonna be okay.
I would just say I love her, and that she meant so much to me, and I would just thank you, and I'm so thankful to have her voice in my head all the time, and that I know she'll always be with me, always.
That I love her, and thank you. Thank you for being the friend that you have been, the inspiration you have been to me.
Thank you for loving me when I couldn't love myself. Thank you for always being at that door with open arms and excitement for us, because walking into that world not knowing what was gonna happen, she was a sense of stability. I knew she was gonna be there every week, and I looked forward to seeing her. And the relationship that I grew with her is definitely something special that I will hold in my heart forever.
I think I would tell Mary-Curtis that I won't give up, and that her ideals will live beyond her, beyond I, beyond our organization.
I would tell her thank you and that I love her.
But I just would tell her again how much I love her.
I would tell her how much I loved her and cared about her. Also, how much I appreciated what she did and accomplished. I appreciated her outlook on life, what she believed in. I think she'd say, never forget what the purpose is. Never forget what we're here for. That we're here for the children, and never give up and keep going. She never gave up on anything and making this a better world.
If you try to put into words what I loved about Mary-Curtis, it would be she was all. She never changed in who she was from the beginning. I wouldn't have known that at the outset, but I could see that as our life moved along. No matter what the circumstances along our way, she was always the person that she had always been. As I learned more about her and we learned about each other, this became evident, and this became understood in a way that how important it had been to our whole marriage, and all of the things that we did, all the risks that we took, all of the things that we may have been able to accomplish, because she was the person that she was all through this, solid, driven, caring, generous, always think of others. All of those qualities that you want to have in a human being, they were there from the get-go. And so it was all there. And I would have to say the uttermost part of this was her love for our children. And what we both were given. He very simply said one evening, "It's been a joy." And it has been a joy.